drink from the trolley tire. Thank you, David. Just leave it there. What have you selected, Sister Suze, please?
Well, something exciting today. A nice tall, with an umbrella, pina colada.
A bit bold, really, isn't it?
Why not?
What's the point of the umbrella?
Just makes you feel like you're on holiday when you're not.
Oh, so it does, yeah.
Very good. I'll take that. Today's confession and the receiver of today's smart speaker is Captain Chaos.
Oh, dear.
I know. Father Simon says, Captain Chaos, it was a beautiful sunny day. I'd taken my beloved for what was to be a lovely day in the Cotswolds, accompanied by our sprightly Cocker Spaniel, Floss. Obviously, I've changed the name of the dog.
Of the dog. Of course we have. Yeah, because he's got lawyers.
As we drove around,
Might do.
gazing at the scenery and admiring chocolate box thatched cottages, you know, the sort with roses around the door, we happened upon what can only be described as the picture postcard village of Bourton-on-the-Water. It was obviously a well-known location as tourists milled around taking in the pure Englishness of their surroundings, even if nowhere else in England looks like Bourton-on-the-Water.
Yeah.
Many enjoying picnics on the riverbank, feeding the ducks and taking holiday snaps with their families. Now, Bourton-on-the-Water is actually on the water. It's the River Windrush, as you might know. Picture, if you can, rows of quaint shops, thatched cottages and the like facing onto both sides of a crystal-clear, gently flowing river, divided only by the occasional butter-coloured Cotswold stone footbridge, most of them built 1654.
Painting
Wow.
pictures there.
Nice.
We'd been in the car for some time by now, and Floss, the dog, being only young, was starting to look agitated. We decided to stop, maybe grab some lunch in one of the delightful-looking tea rooms and let the poor little dog stretch her legs. My partner, who is still too embarrassed... Too
embarrassed.
Too embarrassed.
Embarrassed is something else.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
It's a whole other story.
It is.
Is still too embarrassed to be named, so we will call her Felicity. I suspect, Captain Chaos, that's because she actually is Felicity, but anyway, never mind. Took charge of Floss, responsibly putting her on the lead and walking her at heel. Now, anyone who knows anything about spaniels will know that there are a few things that they like more than anything in the world, and these are they: running, grass, ducks, water, and other people's picnics. And I felt sorry for the poor dog. Faced with what was the canine equivalent of Alton Towers, she was tethered to her lead. But Felicity, ferocious Felicity, had rightly pointed out my responsibilities as one of England's most scenic villages had to be controlled. Even the coach full of Japanese tourists had arrived at this point. They were merrily munching on their lunches and taking souvenir photographs of the idyllic surroundings. These weren't just ordinary lunches. Oh no, they were Bourton-on-the-Water lunches. Whole cheese boards, luxury nuts, roasted tomato focaccia, smoked salmon, balsamic glaze, brie and grape sandwiches, and smoked trout with dill pate. We know this for reasons that you will discover. With grumblings in our stomachs, Felicity did the decent thing and nipped into the shop to get some sandwiches so that we too could enjoy a more pedestrian picnic by the water. My empathy for Floss by this point had somewhat clouded my judgment. After all, what harm, Father said, what harm could it do to let the little dog off and have a few minutes of doggy fun? With Felicity safely out of view, I bent down and unclipped the lead, knowing fully that my intelligent, disciplined dog would obey my commands. Or not. She shot off like a cork from a champagne bottle. Scotch eggs and sushi flying all over, ducks and geese scattering. Still confident that my control of the animal could be regained, and glancing quickly at the sandwich shop to make sure Felicity hadn't noticed, I pursued said spaniel to reattach her. She had other ideas. There was nothing I could do but watch as Floss took off full speed straight down the middle of the shallow, previously tranquil river of the after the waterfowl. The air was full of the sound of ducks and geese flapping frantically to escape the oncoming animal and taking flight. Every single one of them, I have to say, evacuating their bowels with fright
Really?
as they flew over the undeserving tourists and their picnics. At this point, Felicity arrived with a fine selection of baked goods. Her serene demeanour turned to horror at the scene and muttered a few unpleasant words in my direction as she set off in pursuit of our recalcitrant canine. As she took haste along the riverbank, heels catching in the grass, I was suddenly aware of disgruntled looks. I think someone may even have tutted. Miserably, I watched the holidaymakers clean themselves up, throw their food in the bin and wander off in the state of shock. Into the bins went the cheese boards, the luxury nuts, the roasted tomato focaccia, the smoked salmon, the balsamic glaze, the brie and grape sandwiches, and I'm afraid to say, the smoked trout and dill pate. Fearing instant and probably wet retribution, I joined Felicity in the attempt to capture Floss, who was obviously having the time of her life. We eventually regained control and I was firmly put in my place. So I seek forgiveness from the collective for my misplaced confidence in my dog training abilities, and from the tourists that day whose picnics were impressions of rural England and were somewhat tainted from the skies, and also from the many responsible dog owners who I had sought to emulate and failed miserably. Finally, I seek forgiveness from Felicity, who to this day refuses to allow me control of our dog anywhere near open water and will not go back to the Cotswolds for fear of recognition.
Yeah.
In my defence, I was acting what I thought was the best interest of the dog. She had been in the car an awful long time, and I truly believed that my endless hours of training would pay off. I am deeply remorseful. Your Honour, if I could have some kind of...
Oh, hello.
No, we
Not now.
Suze, we don't want another drink.
No,
I know it's tempting.
I've still got a pina colada.
Captain Chaos needs our forgiveness. Anyway, Sister Susie, you're going first.
Well, Captain Chaos, I've been there. I had a Labrador, which is probably just as bad as a Spaniel. And yeah, any time there was food or picnics, you just couldn't risk it. So I feel like you knew what the right thing was to do,
Yes.
and you didn't do it. Therefore, you haven't got my forgiveness, I'm afraid.
I don't think there'll be much listener forgiveness either, because as soon as it's dogs not being under control, everyone goes, I don't think so. However, Brother Matthew...
Well, I think everyone learned a lesson, didn't they? Including Floss. I'm sure Floss isn't going to do that again. And so I think it sounds fine. Also, I feel anyone who goes on picnics, you enter into a social contract, don't you? When you go for a picnic, you're there and you're sitting on the grass, and anything that happens while you're sat on the grass is fair game. And if that means that a dog happens to go running across your luxury nuts, then there you go. Them's the breaks, unfortunately. So for that reason, I'm going to forgive.
OK, people's verdict, please. Do you forgive Captain